Hello, everyone. Do we like data?
Yes.
Do we like graphs?
Yes.
If you said no, this is going to be a rough 20 minutes. So I don't know how to do life without graphs. I actually one year made a graph of how many graphs I made that year, and the answer was about 1,600 graphs. I did not make a graph on Christmas, okay? I did make a graph on Thanksgiving. Don't tell my wife. So what I want to do for you guys today is talk about data related to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That's what Edward asked me to do, so blame it on him if this goes sideways. It's all his fault. So what we're going to do, can we get the slides? Oh wait, that is vibrated. That's fun. So just to give you a little peek behind the curtain on this stuff, it is hard to find data on a group that's not very large in America, okay? A lot of what I have to do is tell people, I would love to tell you more about your group, but I don't have enough survey data to do so. Luckily for you guys, I think there's enough here to do something with, okay? So, this is the share of all adults that self-identify. Now, this is key. This is self-identification here, okay? About 0.5% of all adults in America, that's 1 in 200 adults, self-identify as a Seventh-day Adventist. And among all Protestants, about 1% of all Protestants self-identify as SDA. Okay? Now let me tell you how that works. We do these surveys, big surveys. These surveys I'm showing you here, the total sample size of 1 year is about 60,000 people. Okay? 60,000 people. We ask everyone, what's your present religious affiliation, if any? And you get 12 options. Protestant, Catholic, Latter-day Saint, Orthodox Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, agnostic, nothing in particular, or something else. Those are your options. And by the way, don't ask me about the something else category, because if you want to not like your fellow brother or sister, you realize they check that something else box and put weird stuff in there, like ancient alien theorist, or Jedi, or stuff like that. I don't know what to do with those people. But the way it works is if they pick Protestant, then they're given a second level. Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, and one of those options is Adventist. So these are people who check Protestant and then checked Adventist. I will be the first to tell you, do I think this accurately encapsulates all the SDA folks? No, I don't. But guess what? This is as good as we got. And by the way, this survey didn't exist until 2008. One of the things I have to impress upon people is how little survey data we had for most of American history, okay? So if your group is 1% of America and a typical survey is 1,000 people, guess how many Seventh-day Adventists would be in that survey? 5. You can't do much with 5. So when we get survey samples this big, now we can start working towards some analysis. So that's what I'm going to show you today, is some analysis of the Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, so this data comes from the religion census, okay, which I'm sure some of you are aware of. Michael, if you work with them on handing them data. So they work with actual religious bodies. They go to these denominations and say, let me see your membership records. Let me see your congregations and where they are. It gives you a county-by-county breakdown of religiosity in America, which is the only way we can do this. These guys, it's yeoman's work. God bless these people. I would never want to do this job in my entire life, because a lot of people don't respond and they give you bad numbers. This is the best estimate of the largest religious groups in the United States, okay? Catholic Church, about 62 million Catholics. They estimate there are 21 million non-denominational Christians in America. You guys know those, right? Those warehouse churches you see on the side of the road with, they got the funny like ramp or bridge or ascend or whatever. Those, by the way, I'm telling you that number's an undercount. Because guess what? How are you going to count a group like this? It's almost impossible, right? I think it's closer to 35 million if you're asking me, based on survey data. So Southern Baptists, you all know them. United Methodist, LDS, 6.7 million Latter-day Saints, Mormons in the United States. Muslims, you go down the list, and there we are. I marked you all in red. 1.3 million Seventh-day Adventists, which is about the same size as the Christian churches and Church of Christ and the American Baptist Church, which I happen to be a pastor in for about 20 years. So there you go. 1.3 million, so I think it gives you a nice scale and scope of how big the denomination, especially compared to the bigger denominations in America. And actually, in several of the graphs I'm going to show you about politics, I'm going to compare Seventh-day Adventists to United Methodists and Southern Baptists. It's called a reference category, so you can kind of see where you all line up compared to those larger denominations. So this is a map based on that religion census data of the share of each state's population that's aligned with the SDA. Okay, I tried to color code it. Oregon representing big time. 1% of Oregon's population is Seventh-day Adventist. You can see, and I know you're going to be shocked by this. There's not a lot of y'all folks in Utah. Just cannot even conceive of it, right? 0.1%, but you can see that the percentages are very low, really across the board. 0.6% in California. Roger would like to know 0.6% down there in Florida. You can kind of see where the concentrations are, which is interesting because it's that corner and this corner, right? The bottom right and the top left corner. And not a lot of concentration across the middle of the country, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, places like that. So that kind of gives you a sense of where the most Seventh-day Adventists are. Now, this is a map. The blue is a county that has an SDA congregation listed in the religion census. So it doesn't matter how big it is, it just shows you there is a presence of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in all the blue counties in America. That's pretty good, right? I mean, there's some sparsity across the middle of the country, but then there are pockets where basically every county, almost every county has look at the Southwest. I don't want to walk in front of this, but look. Look at all that right there, right? I mean, that's basically every county in that part of the world has an SDA church. So I like this because it kind of shows you that, the denomination might not be large numerically, but it's very geographically distributed across the country, all over the place. So I tried to find the counties with the highest concentration of Seventh-day Adventists, and here's the top 10. Walla Walla County, Washington. That is the center, the unofficial headquarters, really, of SDA. 1/4, 27% of the population, Walla Walla, Washington. You got Michigan, Berrien County. Anyone from there? What town's there? Benton Harbor. That's 16%. Battle Creek. That's where they had the. UC Battle Creek. Well, that's where I had the Cereal City, USA. I love that. I went to that when I was a kid. That was fantastic. But you've got Oregon again. You've got Alaska, by the way. And by the way, the Alaskan data is tough because there's some of these counties have 800 people in them. So Tennessee, Nebraska. But then once you get down to the bottom, you see 5%, 4%, 6%, 8%. So that kind of gives you a sense of where the most, as a concentration, as a percentage, Seventh-day Adventists are. Okay, so racial composition of the Seventh-day Adventists. Remember, this is self-identified. 47% identify as white, 29% identify as African-American or black, 14% are Hispanic, 6% are all others, which means mixed race, anything else, and then Asian is 5%. Okay? Now, Michael and I were just talking about this. This varies from what you guys know internally. But again, remember, that's denominational statistics versus survey data, right? These are people who self-identify, choose to sort themselves into these categories, which we all can admit there's survey error here, right? When people don't pick Protestant. A lot of people don't know what the word Protestant means. If you don't pick Protestant, you don't get the Adventist option. You get shuffled somewhere else. So that plays a lot into what I'm going to show you. And like I said, this is the best data that we have. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but you go with what you got. And I think it's good enough definitely to share with you guys today. So about half white, 30% black, 15% Hispanic. I think that's, and what I'm going to do from this point forward, by the way, is break the sample into white, non-white, because the numbers got so small in those other groups that it's not a good idea to share numbers when they're really, really small like that. So it'll be white versus non-white. Okay, so I compared, you guys are in the red bars, and then all Americans are in the blue, so you can kind of see how the composition of your denomination is different than the composition of all Americans. Okay, so if you do a general survey, you do about 1,000 people, you should get about 675 white people. That'd be a standard sample. You're 47%, America's 68%. Definitely an overrepresentation of African Americans in the Seventh-day Adventists. Double the national average, actually. And even an overrepresentation of Hispanic Americans, 14% versus 10%. So the only large denomination in America that's shown consistent growth over the last 30 years is the Assemblies of God. You guys heard of that before? It's a Pentecostal denomination, kind of a holiness denomination. And I did a lot of analysis trying to figure out what was the driver of that growth. You know what the main driver of that growth was? They've leaned into racial diversity. They used to be very white 20 years ago, and now their racial composition looks almost exactly like what America looks like. And that is, the Southern Baptists are not growing, United Methodists are not growing, Presbyterians are not growing, Assemblies of God is growing. I think you guys are actually really well positioned from this perspective, because you need to look like what the next generation looks like, which is less white, obviously, demographically speaking. So I think this is a real strength for what you guys have going on here. And I would look at that and go, that to me makes sense, because you can't just make a denomination diverse. You can't just walk into a church and go, okay, everybody, let's mix it up now. It doesn't work that way. Can you imagine? Like, okay, less white people. Y'all got to get out of here. But that's what a lot of these churches are facing, though. Southern Baptists are facing this. United Methodists are facing this. To me, you guys are ahead of the curve when it comes to what the future looks like. I actually think this is going to make growth easier. And by the way, the share of all Americans who are Christians has declined. We know that. Did you know this? The share of Americans who identify as non-white Christians is the same today as it was in 1972. 17% of America are non-white Christians. Well, the share of Americans who are white Christians has dropped by 20 percentage points. The share of non-white has stayed exactly the same. So we talk about the decline of Christianity in America. You know what we really should say? The decline of white Christianity in America, right? So the future of the church is not white Christianity. The future of the church is diverse, racially diverse Christianity. That's the only way the church can survive, largely speaking, going forward. Okay, so I love doing age, because this is adults. Remember, we can't survey kids, because let me tell you, surveying adults is hard enough. Getting stuff through my institutional review board with just adults is a nightmare. I can't even imagine trying to figure out how to do it with kids. So just 18 and up, okay? All Americans, the distributions across the top. You can see of adults, about 30% are between the ages of 18 and 35, and then 15, 13, 20, and about 23% of all American adults are 65 and older, okay? I put Catholics here, I put Southern Baptists here, I put United Methodists down there to give you a sense of, like, here's some big denominations so you can see where they are compared to where you guys are. And let me tell you, you actually look in some ways like the entire population. Not too much older, 25% at the very top, the 65 plus, that's good, right in line with the population. The bottom number, the 18 to 35, is a little bit low, 5 points lower, but not crazy. Compare that to Southern Baptists and United Methodists, right? My worst conversation, I go to United Methodist Church now because my church closed down, and that's my only option, really. And I don't want to have this conversation with them, but I look around and go, guys, we're old here. And the future's tough when you're in that age bracket, because here's what I know. I do a lot of work on this. There are really two ways for a church to grow: conversion and retention. Conversion and retention are all you have, right? Retention means you've got young people in your church and you keep them into adulthood. Conversion means you bring new people in from the outside. You know how hard conversion is? Latter-day Saints, right? You know the Latter-day Saints, they do, if you're a young man in the Latter-day Saint church, you're supposed to go on a 2-year mission. You know the guys with the black pants and the white shirts that walk around? You know what I'm talking about? You're supposed to go all the way across the world, sometimes in America, sometimes somewhere else. They pick where you go, by the way. 2 years, 40 hours a week. You know what the average missionary converts in 2 years working full-time? 2 converts. So think about that, right? Your church can hire 2 missionaries and pay them full-time wages for 2 years, and they will yield a total of 4 converts. Or you could have 2 families come in, have 2 kids each, and keep them. Which one's easier? Right? Retention is the most important thing. Having young families in your churches is when I walk into a church, I can pretty much diagnose what's going to happen just by looking around for 5 minutes. And if your nursery is empty and your 65-plus Sunday school classroom is full, God bless you. But actuarially, you're not long for this world, right? I mean, math is math. And I wish you all would live forever, but guess what? Time doesn't stop. You know? So having that core of young people in your church is absolutely key. And not only having them, make sure they have kids, by the way. Children are a blessing. Be fruitful and multiply, right? That's right. You're building the kingdom by having kids, right? And keeping them in the fold is incredibly important. Okay? So that's age. Now, let's go to education. Okay? So, again, all Americans are across the top. Here's what really struck me about this. I was kind of surprised by how little variation there was across all these traditions. So, in this sample, about 1/3 of Seventh-day Adventists said they had a high school diploma or less. That is about 5 points lower than the entire population. About 33% of Adventists said they had a college degree, 4-year college degree or more, which is actually right in line with the national average. Not higher and not lower. And then you can see there's a couple categories where it wiggles a little bit, but generally speaking, what you see is between all Americans and Catholics and Seventh-day Adventists and Southern Baptists, the gap is not that big, right? Education is all, by the way, let me talk about education just for a minute. The data is very clear on this point. Educated people are more likely to be religious than non-educated people. Let me say that again. We all read too much Karl Marx when we were kids, okay? It said, religion's the opiate of the people. You know what I'm talking about? Dumb people are religious, right? It's a bunch of hillbilly snake handlers is what the perception is. Well, guess what the data says? The person that's the most likely to come to church on this Sunday is someone with a graduate degree. The person the least likely is someone who did not finish high school. Okay? If you look at all the education, you know what level of education is the most likely to be religious? It's people with master's degrees. Master's degrees. Only 20% of them are non-religious compared to 33% of people with a high school diploma. Okay? Education, you should encourage your people to get educated, stay educated, continue their education. It will not drive them away from the faith. It actually will drive them into the faith. And the data says that people who learn about other faiths in college are actually more committed to their own faith when they leave college. We shouldn't don't shelter these kids, okay? Expose them in a way that makes sense. And they will come back. If you train them up right, they will come back. Right? Deeply root them in what you believe, in what you are, in the value of what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ and to be a member of a local church. Because both those things are incredibly important for them, not only for their soul, but also for their body. I don't think we forget that. The data says that religious people live longer than non-religious people. It's not just about your eternal soul. It's about what happens here too, right? It's both things at the same time. So, all right, enough rant about that. Education is good. Don't worry about it. All right, income. Again, I was really surprised by how much the income did not vary that much across traditions, although I will say this. Notice how the Seventh-day Adventists, 35% of them reported having a household income of less than $30,000 a year, which is much higher, 7 points higher than the national average, and it's much higher than the other denominations I compared in the graph. So education might be good. Income is lower, though. But then at the top end, you see like 18% make about $100,000 or more. That's, again, a little bit lower than the national average. So if I was going to describe the socioeconomic status from this data, I would say educationally, right in line, income-wise, a little below the national average. Okay? And I can't get into the reasons why that is.
Sir,
Yeah.
so you showed a slide earlier
Mm-hmm.
that showed that Seventh-day Adventists were 29% black.
Yeah, 27, yeah, whatever it was, yeah,
And now you're seeing
29.
income.
Income's lower.
I think we're seeing those results of
I-
structural inequities that we talked about earlier.
I think there's something to be said for that, right? Institutional racism is a real thing. As someone who studies these things often, I will tell you it exists. Anyone who says that is being willfully ignorant of what the data says, which might be happening quite a bit recently. Maybe even, I don't know, this week. I didn't say anything. By the way, it's okay to take Tylenol if you're pregnant, women. There's no data that says it shouldn't be. Anyway, or acetaminophen, as they say. I don't even know how to mess it up as bad as he did. I was like going to try to, and I was like, I can't even do it. Acetaminophen. Is that how we say it? Anyway. I swear we're going to put this in textbooks for history someday, and our grandchildren are going to be like, what exactly happened there? And all we can do, friends, is just do this and walk on, right? I don't know. I don't understand why, but here we are. Okay, so let's look at religion variables for a minute. Seventh day. Hey guys, you guys go to church a bunch. Congratulations. Hallelujah. 48% of Seventh-day Adventists report weekly church attendance. That is higher than. That's in line with the Southern Baptists and higher than the Methodists and the Catholics. How about that, huh? You guys are twice as likely to go to church as the average American is. How about that? That's good. Very, very devout. When I looked at this graph, I thought, well, that's at the very tippity top. That's as high as Latter-day Saints, and they go to church a bunch. That's high as Southern Baptists. They go to church a bunch. 50% is like the tippity top of what any denomination does. And by the way, this is self-reported data. Are they actually going? I don't know. I'm not following them into the church, like checking the box. Sir, you only went 26 times last year. But I think my whole thing about this is if you say you're a weekly attender, guess what? You are one. You know, if that's the kind of person you see yourself as, this is not a tally mark. You get what I'm saying here? I don't care about tally marks. I care about the kind of person who says they go to church once a week. That's what matters to me. Yeah.
Is that in person or
This is it doesn't designate, but I've got a bunch of data on online attendance, and very few Americans actually go online. But here's a fun fact. The people who are the most likely to watch online are the people who go a bunch in person. It's like people who can't get enough. You know what I mean? So they'll go to Sunday church and Wednesday Bible study, and then Tuesday they're going to watch this church, and Wednesday they're going to watch this one over here and all this stuff. It's like they want 24 hours a day of Jesus, which is fine, don't get me wrong, but you need a hobby besides just watching church every night, I think. Put on Lawrence Welk or something. That's an old reference. So, no, the answer is we don't ask the question differently for a reason, because we want comparability before COVID and after COVID, and the data says that attendance didn't change that much before or after. So I think people are still answering in-person attendance. And by the way, I just wrote a post on that came out Monday. The title is Religious People Are Happier Than Non-Religious People, which is a fact. Guess what? In-person attendance drives up happiness. Online attendance doesn't. Get these people in the church, okay? There's something about gathering together as a body of believers in person that cannot be replicated anywhere else, right? Okay, so we did attendance. Now let's look at how important is religion in your life? Congratulations, guys. 72% said very important. 22% said somewhat important. Math majors, that's 94% in the top two categories. That's in line with Southern Baptists. That's way higher than national average. It's way higher than Catholics, and it's somewhat higher than Methodists. So again, I think that number, from what I remember, that's at the top. Like for those who identify as Advent, that you guys score really, really high on religiosity metrics, okay? So, well done. Here's an interesting question. We ask everybody, do you self-identify as born again or evangelical or not? You get to choose, right? 70% of Seventh-day Adventists say they're evangelical. That's wild, right? I did not have any conception of what the number would be until I calculated it, which is always fun because, like, ooh, it's surprising, right? That is really high. Yes?
So I would challenge that they're probably responding to the born again part.
Probably. Yeah, I think that's probably right. But I also think, well, I can't go into the methodology of that. The question is double-barreled because it says born again or evangelical. It says two things at once. But to still say that you're evangelical despite what that word has become to mean in America is interesting, right? Like, the negativity of that word does not override the positivity of the born again piece, and I think there's something to be said about that. Okay, partisan distribution. 25% of Seventh-day Adventists identify as strong Democrats. 24% identify as strong Republicans. Good luck. Ooh, pick a side, right? What's really interesting is the partisan distribution of your church is actually very even. The Republican side, 15% in the middle, and then even numbers on each side. And that's actually really unusual because denominations are sort of sorting themselves out now politically. For instance, like look at the Southern Baptists, for goodness sakes, right? Like I'm telling you that 16% are all the black Southern Baptists. There's no. My grandma died. She was 102. She was a white Democrat Southern Baptist, and when she died, that was the last one. I feel like there's just the old school Democrats from back in the 40s and 50s. They're all gone now. And basically, the Southern Baptist Convention is, look, I mean, they're almost all 75% Republicans now. Methodists are sort of divided. Catholics are really divided too, by the way, which you're 62 million people. What do you got, right? I mean, you're going to have to be. It's amazing to me the Catholic Church in America still hangs together. One institution. Like, I'm just floored by that. Okay, partisan distribution. I did it by race. Surprise, surprise. Race matters. You can see what's interesting is like these numbers are almost mirror images of each other, right? So 39% of non-whites identify as strong Democrats. 37% of whites identify as strong Republicans. So almost, and even like 10% here, 10% there, right? Like, so the numbers are they're perfectly opposite of each other, really, in the aggregate. Listen, race, we see everything through the prism of race in this country, right? It's just how we are right now. And white Christians in America are Republicans, and becoming increasingly so over time. And that's not just true of Seventh-day Adventists, that's true of Baptists and Methodists and Lutherans and Catholics and everyone else, right? And non-white Christians, the data's a little mixed on this, right? We can see what happened in 2024, which I'll show you in a minute. There's been some movement in the rightward direction in the last couple of years. So, okay, I'm almost out of time, so we're going to go. There's a heat map. So what this is across the bottom is ideology, and then up here is partisanship, because those two ideas are not the same thing, right? You could be a moderate Democrat or a moderate Republican. You could even be a conservative Democrat if you wanted to be. This is America. You can just do things here, right? So what you see is a third of Seventh-day Adventists identify as conservative Republicans. That's top right. 18% identify as liberal Democrats. That's bottom left. But then 25% say they're moderate Democrats, which I think if you look at black Protestants as a category, you know where most of them line up? Moderate Democrats. And so that tracks with me, because I think what you're seeing there is you're seeing a lot of African Americans go, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, but there's some things they're up to I don't love, so I won't call myself a liberal, I'll call myself a moderate. So that together is 43%. Those two categories up there are 42% together. So moderate Republicans, conservative Republicans, moderate Democrats, liberal Democrats, they're basically the same number of people, top and bottom, 42% on each. And if we do it by race, you can see how this differentiates itself, right? Half of white Seventh-day Adventists say they're conservative Republicans. It's only 17% of non-white Seventh-day Adventists. Meanwhile, you can see the bottom two left squares are really where your non-whites find themselves in the Democrat column, but the liberal Democrat and the moderate Democrat, for them, the most popular choice, one I just talked about, was moderate Democrat. About 40% of non-white Seventh-day Adventists say they're moderate Democrats, okay? Only 17% of them say that they are conservative Republicans. So, how do you all vote? Yeah. There was a rightward shift in this country that happened in 2024, and it happened basically among every demographic group that we look at. Young, old, white, non-white, Christians, non-Christians. If you look at county level map, I mean, it's just insane like how the country moved like a point and a half to the right in 2024. And you can see it was even more among Seventh-day Adventists. So 55% for Obama, 56% for Obama, 48% for Clinton, although a lot voted for third party there, interestingly enough. And then in 2020, Biden got 64% of the vote. And then in 2024, Harris only got 46% of the vote. So the first time I see in the data where the majority of Seventh-day Adventists voted for the Republican was in 2024. 2024 was the first year Seventh-day Adventists were majority Republicans at the ballot box. Yep. That's what it is. They pulled the lever for Trump. I gotta do. I'm out. That thing's flashing. So we're gonna chop it up here in a minute, as the kids say. Last graph. I thought you guys would like to look at social issues, some hot button social issues. Okay. So ban abortion pills by mail. That's a hot topic right now. Trump administration wants to ban abortion pills by mail. 69% of Republicans as a whole are in favor. 17% of Democrats. 58% of Seventh-day Adventists. So on that, definitely closer to the Republicans on that issue. Ban gender transition operations, not operations, any medical treatment for minors. 82% of Republicans are in favor, 38% of Democrats, 67% of Seventh-day Adventists. Okay? Ban out-of-state abortions, which means can a woman, if she lives in Alabama, travel to Illinois to have an abortion? 30% of Republicans are in favor, which is not that many, by the way. This is not a popular policy. Guess what? Seventh-day Adventists, you're right there, right in that same category. I'll make sure that to get a pronoun change in a school, the parents have to give permission. 88% of Republicans are in favor. It's 78% of Seventh-day Adventists are in favor. Require age checks for pornography, which is crazy popular, by the way. Like if I was a politician, that's why I'd run on right now. Everyone's, including Democrats, are in favor. You guys are kind of right there in line with that. And then support school vouchers. 75% of Republicans are in favor. 64% of Seventh-day Adventists are in favor. So, I mean, I look at this graph and you know what I think? There's a lot of social conservatism inside Seventh-day Adventists. So that might be, hey, that graph might be related to that graph, right? It might be the social issues doing the work here, doing the driving. So, hey, if you want this, you can have it. Scan the QR code. Okay, I'm going to go sit down now, and someone else is going to talk. So, thanks, guys.